My name is Mark Braun, and I do not have a problem using the internet.
Nice. So, Mark, what was the first time that you actually saw used a computer? Did you see it at the store? Where was it?
Well, I guess it would depend how you define a computer. Would you define because I definitely bumped up against a bunch of calculators when I was a kid. My dad was a collector of calculators, and so he had all sorts of calculators. And the first time I would say that I bumped up against an actual computer was when I was in, I think it was high school, and a friend of mine in high school, for some reason, I'm still not sure why, had access to the school district mainframe as, I guess, part of a class he was in.
Changing grades.
And so he would let me go with him sometimes into the room where he had a terminal to access it and hang out with him while he was working on some programming homework in BASIC, I think. And he's trying to troubleshoot his BASIC program. And I didn't know anything about computers, and I'm looking at what he's doing.
So that was the first wow, huh?
And it's like, I'm good with patterns. So I'd be looking at what he's doing, and I'm like, well, shouldn't this match this? And he's like, oh, yeah. And so it's like I'm troubleshooting his computer program, and you don't even know.
You didn't realize you were doing deductive reasoning at that point. Yeah.
But I also realized there's a thing of, like when you type something, you have a typo. It's hard to find your own typo sometimes because the same problem that caused it is still going on in your brain, and someone else can often find it easy.
It's like proofreading, right?
Yeah.
I was a typesetter for a long time. How do this sound? I mean, you got to read everything out.
And so also with that friend in high school, on the district computer, we would also play the Unix Star Trek game.
So district computer, you mean school computer?
The district mainframe, which he would access through a terminal.
Now, was this college?
That was high school.
High school. They don't have district mainframe computers in high school anymore. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it sad?
Just like I know they don't have, when I got to college, something they don't have anymore is my first computer class in college, we used Hollerith cards.
All right. Well, that helps me move to the next question.
Which for those of you watching the interview who don't know, are also called IBM cards, and those of you who don't know that, they're also called punch cards.
Right. So, well, that helps me move to the next question. What's the first computer you actually owned?
The first person...
And how did you get it?
The first person that I knew personally who owned a computer...
No, you. Well, how did you get it?
Was my mom.
Ah, so it became yours.
Which was a Zenith, and it was... I'm trying to think of vintage here. It was probably early college for me, which would have been mid-'80s. And the reason that she had a computer is because she did genealogy research on family history. And my dad, interestingly, out of character for him, he is the one who orchestrated her getting a computer by getting all the family members together to come in together on like a Christmas or birthday present for her.
And so was the computer being used for a spreadsheet or?
Well, it was being used to run her genealogy software, to do the family tree research. And the first computer that I owned was one that I bought in, I guess it would have been 1995, because I made the mistake of going with Windows 95. I was looking between Windows 95 and OS2. I should have gone with OS2. I went with Windows 95, and when I made the choice, I jumped in with both feet, said, okay, I'm going to be fully 95, and of course, as well, based on who you work for, I'm sure you know very well how much of a problem
95 was better than OS2, because OS2 is no more.
OS2 is still around, actually.
Really? From IBM?
Absolutely. It's licensed through third party now.
You can't run Steam.
And
you can't play a video game on it. Who wants it?
I started using OS2 about a year after I bought that Windows 95 computer. And
then you're like, why didn't I go there?
And I kept using OS2 up until just a few years ago.
Wow.
And the only reason I'm not using it now is because of pulls towards certain software that I need to run that wasn't available on
All right. So the next question goes a little bit deeper, and it's, what did you not see coming?
So as I saw computers developing, software developing, systems developing, internet developing, for some silly reason, I had this perception of productivity, usability.
More to get done, huh?
So in some ways, I guess you would say, let me refer to a movie called The Pirates of Silicon Valley.
Love it.
And I would say that very much like in that movie, I was probably embedded in the IBM mindset as opposed to the Apple mindset, where I saw really the way to take computing as to actually accomplishing useful things in an efficient way. What I did not see is that computing would be overtaken by frivolous stuff, which is where we are now. People choose computers and phones and applications and whatnot based on all the silly little frivolous, oh, look at me, and aren't I cute uses, not based on how can we accomplish
I want to
this
learn
worthy
something
goal,
new.
How can we do this well, how can I educate myself, how can I help the world. It's not about that. It's about look at this silly wig
So
I put on my
if I can
cat.
sum it up, you see that it's made people be able to focus more on selfish goals rather than globalistic goals or group goals. Is that right?
I'd say that's part of it.
Accurate?
Yes. But even there's some selfish goals which, and I try not to judge people, but there's some selfish goals which are more beneficial, such as education. But so much of it, I think, is focused on selfish goals, which are, as I say, frivolous, which I know is a judgment in and of itself. But there's so much useless junk going on in the world of computing, in my opinion, and that's just my judgment.
No, and I completely understand that. And the way I look at it is, everybody's got something to say. A lot of it's not worth a damn.
Exactly.
And the
Including
internet
what
really,
you and I have to say.
yeah, and the internet really makes that happen. You know, it's.
And I'm all for free speech and expression of ideas. I think that is one of the wonderful things that has come from computing and the internet.
Good answer. All right. So last question here for you. What do you want to see happen?
Well, I have some expectations. It's not the same as what I want necessarily,
right,
although in some ways it is. My expectation is that we are going to continue to get more and more heavily dependent on the technology, and then my expectation is that one day...
You want that to happen?
I'm not saying I want that.
Expectation sounds kind of wanting. That's why I'm saying that.
Not at all.
I just like you to clarify that.
I expect...
You think it's going to happen?
I expect that the government will continue to charge me taxes. That doesn't mean I want that, but I expect that.
All right.
So one of my expectations is that we will continue to get more and more dependent on the technology. And then I have the expectation, and this is where a want comes in, I guess, to a certain degree of want. I then expect the huge worldwide EMP to come about, which will wipe out all of the computer technology in the world, and we will be back to stone knives and bearskins. And
you expect that to happen?
And any true Trekkie will get that reference.
Oh, I understand it completely, but I'm saying you expect that to happen. I mean, I think that EMPs are going to go off. There's no doubt in my mind they're going to go off somewhere in the world at one time in my lifetime. I think that's going to happen. It's going to. But I also think that a lot of people are preparing for that.
And you know, EMP could be a metaphor. It doesn't have to be an actual EMP.
Something's going to disrupt. I understand.
There are tipping points.
I like that.
And everything in history goes in cycles. And there are tipping points. And you know, it's like look at you know, like the economic collapses that have happened, because things have got the pendulum has swung a certain direction, you know, a certain distance in a certain direction, and then there's a reversion.
Bails.
Yeah. And so there's a tipping point that the more heavily dependent that that people become, or society becomes, or culture becomes on a particular thing, and then if something happens, whether it's an EMP, literally or figuratively, metaphorically,
right.
whatever it is, that things swing back the other direction, or we reach a point of unsustainability.
As the market says, there will be a correction.
Exactly. It's a market correction, and all of a sudden you have all these people who do not have the knowledge or skills to do certain things.
Let me take that a little further. So
if
you've got a bunch of corrections over time, where do you want to see us in 50 years?
So what I really want in terms of technology is I want to see technology solve human problems, both individual and cultural, societal, worldwide problems. And I'd also like to see technology improve this state of life for humans, and well, really for the whole world. Make things better for everyone. And I think part of that would include eliminating some of the problems in society, such as diseases and famine and things like that.
Well, I respect that, but and I think that's a great goal, but I don't think that technology can solve human problems. I think it's a good tool.
It's a tool.
You know,
and while I would like,
if it's going to make it so that we have the smartest minds across the world working on something collaboratively, right, that they can find a solution, I think that's a good possibility. But I don't think it's going to solve our problems. It's my own opinion.
And I agree, it's a tool, and I think there's a couple of reasons why that idea of mine as a want will not be accomplished. One is because of the fact that in much of industry and society and government and culture, there is a lack of Occam's razor, where things end up being over complicated and top heavy and things like this, excessively, to a point where they're not as effective or as efficient as they could be towards certain uses in problem solving. And then, of course, there is the underlying problem in society and culture, which is that many of our problems are political, not technical. Like, for instance, there's
getting something done.
Like, for instance, there's enough food grown in the world to feed every person on the earth, but the logistics and the politics of that logistics of where the food is compared to the people that need it is a disconnect. And the same goes for a lot of those issues. So I think even though technology gives us the tools to be able to improve life for everyone on the planet, it's going to be other factors that are going to limit that from happening.
I must agree.
And therefore, making everyone entirely dependent on the technology and then having the EMP or whatever eliminate all that and throw us back to basics is not a bad thing, in my opinion.
Definitely. If you don't mind introducing yourself one more time.
This is Mark Braun, and that's the way it won't be.
Nice.